All right, so hello everyone. Let's get started. And the first thing we're going to be looking at is the assignment I just sent everyone in the email. So you just should have just received this. So basically what we want to do here is create a basic financial state calculator. Okay, that is just very fancy language for a software that will print out a bunch of information depending on what variables have been stored inside, right? So what you need to do is you need to create a variable for each of these, right? So each of these should have its own variable, and then using those variables you have to print out this over here, this paragraph. Okay, so what I'll show you what that means by just doing the first line for you. Okay, so let's copy this and go to PyCharm. Okay, so anyways, all right, so the first line we want to have is, I'm going to write this down as a comment. So if you put a hash like this, what happens is the code ignores the line in front of it, right? So over here I can write down anything. Oh, my bad. Let's copy that again. Um, right, so no. Okay, so it's not letting me copy it right now. I'm just going to type it by hand. So the first thing we want to write is hello and then user name, right? And then a comma. So this is the first line that we want to print out, right? So let's try to do this. So let's first create a variable name for our username. You'll have to create variable names for everything. I'm just going to do it for username right now. So for now, let's take my username. So let's give it Akshaan underscore Garg. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to print this out, right? So we just write a simple print statement and then we say hello, right? That's the first thing we want to print out. Then what we can do is we can put a comma in here and write the next thing. So what's the next thing? The username, right? So the username will be username, right? The variable we just created. And then we can put another comma and then add this comma at the end over here, right? So that will also be in a string. So this is a string, this is also a string, and this is also a string. And I've separated them by a comma, which will print them out. Okay. Please mute yourself if you're not asking a question. Okay, thank you. Next, we want to run this piece of code, and we'll see over here, we have what we needed, right? But now you'll see we have these extra spaces in between, right? This is because we use a comma over here, right? So when we use the comma separator inside print, it puts an extra space. So if you want to avoid that, what you can also do is you can add these strings together. Okay. So like that. So if we run this now, this looks closer to what we want, right? So this is how you can do the rest as well. Okay. So for something that is not a string, you can't use this plus. You will have to use a comma. Okay. But if it is a string, you can use the plus. Make sense? All right. So let's quickly look at the assignment again. There's also extra credit if you are able to do this part, right? And this part will need formulas. So the formulas are given over here. right? So you can calculate each of these using the variables that you've already created, right? Make sense? Anybody have any questions? Was everybody able to do the first assignment where you have to set up PyCharm and Python? Was everybody able to give their first print function a try?
Yes, I was.
Okay,
Thank.
that's great. Great to hear. All right. So if you have any trouble doing that, let me just know after class. All right, and we can troubleshoot your installation. Otherwise, we're good to go, and you should be able to do this assignment now. So let's get started with our topic for today. All right, so that is going to be conditionals and data structures in Python, part one. Okay, so conditionals we're going to finish today, but data structures we'll need another two classes to fully understand all of them. So let's get started right away. And the first conditional we have over here is our if statement, right? So the if statement is kind of like English, right? So when we use the if statement, what do we mean in English, right? So let's try to have a look at that, right? Sorry, give me just a second. Okay, in the meantime, I'm going to open PyCharm and we're going to see what an if statement looks like. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my stylus working so that I can show you guys what I mean. All right, so now let's have a look. So, all right, I can annotate now. So, what is an if statement in English, right? So, if I say if and then I say a sentence, let's say sentence one, and then I put a comma, right? And then I say sentence two, right? And what does this mean? This means that if this sentence one is true, then this sentence two will also be true, right? That's what happens. So if, for example, I say if apple price is less than $2, right? Let's say buy apples, right? This is an English sentence, right? So what does this mean? That if the price of an apple is less than 2, then buy the apple. So if you go to the market and it's less than 2, you will buy the apple, right? That's how it works. So it is very similar in um, Python, right? So let's have a look at the Python version of this, right? So let's make a variable, call it apple price, okay? And let's say the apple price right now is 3, okay? Now I can say if apple price less than 5, print price is less than 5, right? So what you need to remember now over here is this indentation, right? So when you say if, you have four parts of this, right? So which you need to take care of. So the first thing obviously is the if itself. So you have to write the if word, right? Then you will have the conditional statement, right? So this will be something that is true or false. You can even use a Boolean variable, right? Instead of using an entire statement like this. And then what you do is you indent it after putting this colon, right? So the four parts are the if word, right? Then the statement, that if this statement is true, then we're going to do what is next. Then we use the colon, right? And after the colon, we have to indent it. Okay. So now let's try to run this code. And as you can see, it says price is less than 5. But now if I change it, let's say I make it 9, right? And now I run it, you'll see nothing happen, right? Why? Because this is false. It ignores everything that is indented after the colon, right? So everything that has this extra tab over here after this colon will only be executed if the statement before this colon is true. Okay, make sense? Anybody have any doubts? Anybody who thinks this is not clear? Okay, so let's go back to our presentation then. All right, so over here now we have if else, right? So let's have a look at what else does. So let's go back to PyCharm. All right. So now we did if apple price is less than 5, then this. But then we can also use the word called else. So what this does is if this statement is not true, then whatever is inside this else will get executed, right? So if for example inside here I write print price is not less than 5, right? And now if I execute this piece of code, this comes over here. Why? Let's have a look. Okay. So first up here, we are at line 1, right? So at line 1, what happens? We create this variable called apple price. Let's make a box for it. This is what is stored inside the memory of the computer, right? So on the first line, we have 9 over here. Then second line is empty. Then it goes to the third line. It sees an if statement. So it's like, okay, let's see what is after that. So it sees the statement after that. It says apple price less than 5. Is it less than 5? No, right? So this will be false, right? Sorry, excuse me. So what happens is because this is false, it does not go inside here. It ignores this line and it sees that there's an else statement over here. So it says, okay, so this was false. We go to the else statement and we execute what is inside else. So what is inside else? Print this line out. So in the output, we'll get price is not less than 5, right? And that's what we get over here. That makes sense? All right. I see somebody unmuted themselves. Do you have a question?
No, please.
Okay. So,
Akshan,
yep. Who is this? Sorry.
yeah, uh, yeah, this is Steven.
Hi, Steven.
I
So,
just want
what's
to,
your doubt?
yes, all right, I just want to ask you, it's somewhat of a clarification on when you have written the Apple price, are you supposed to learn it or just indent it then?
Sorry, I didn't
The
understand that last part. Could you repeat that?
Okay, after writing Apple price, the variable, when you have written the variables, did you learn the uh, did you learn it or you just jump you came to the second part, or maybe you learn it first?
I don't understand your question still. Sorry. So,
Okay.
I
After
can
writing
go
the
through
variable,
this. Yeah, we write the variable, right? After that, what is your question?
yeah, the next step, right? Did you learn it? Okay.
Did you what?
Learn.
Learn it? I'm not
All
sure.
right. I just want a summary of clarification. After writing the variable,
Mm-hmm.
what was your next step? Yeah, is it that after writing the variable, you just come to uh, the condition,
Yeah.
maybe you learn it first?
Yeah, so in the second line it's empty, right? That's so nothing happens over there. Then we come to line number three. Over there it sees, okay, Apple price less than 5. This is false. So what happens is it says, okay, this is an if statement. This if statement is false. So I'm going to ignore everything that is indented after the colon, right? So what is the next not indented thing after the colon? This else statement, right? And this else statement gets executed when this if is false. Is this if false? Yes, it is false. So this else will get executed, which is this statement. Does that answer your question?
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's go back to our presentation now. All right. So then we have the elif. So let's have a look at what the elif statement does. So let's say I want to also be able to see if it is exactly equal to 5, right? So between this if and this else statement, what I can do is I can add an elif statement. Elif is short for else if. Okay. And what this elif statement does is it is only executed if this one is false, but it also checks a condition. Okay. So the condition, for example, in our case can be Apple price equals 5, right? And then we can print out price is 5, right? So now what will happen is if this statement is true, then only this will get executed and these two get ignored, right? So this gets ignored and this gets ignored. If this statement is false, but then this statement is true, then this will get ignored, right? This will get executed, but this will get ignored. But then if both of these are false, only then it will come to this third else and print this out. Okay, so let's see this in action. So let's try the first condition where it is less than 5. So let's put 3. We run it. It will say price is less than 5 because only this one gets executed. Why? Because this is true, and because this is true, it ignores the other ones, right? Similarly, let's try 5, right? So now if I run this, we get price is 5. Why do we get this? Because this one is false, then it goes to this else, but this is also an if, so it checks this one. Is this true? Yes, it's true. So it executes this one and ignores the else statement, right? Now if I make it more than 5 and run it again, we get price is not less than 5. Why? Because this is false, it comes to this else, but this is also an if. It checks, is this true? This is not true. So it goes to the next one still. And this is just an else statement. So this gets executed. Okay. Any questions? So I see a hand by Gabby. Go ahead.
Uh, does it make any difference if we put the if after if or after else?
So the else will always be at the end. Okay. So the else will always be the last condition, right? So this is what happens when all the other ones fail, right? And the elif will can only be after an if, right? Without an if, we can't have an else or an elif. So first we need an if statement, right? After that, we can put another if statement. That is also fine, right? In this case, it won't really matter. Why? Because it will, if it is less than 5, it will automatically not be, this will automatically not be true, right? But there are some cases in which if the first one is true and the second one is true, we only want the first one to be executed. So in that case, we use elif. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So let's go back to our presentation now. Any other questions? All right. Looks like everybody got everything. Right. So over here, you can see you can also have a multiple elifs in a chain, right? So if the first one is false, then it goes to second one. Second one is false, goes to third one, and so on. But if any of them are true, all the next ones are ignored. Okay. And if you have two if statements one after the other, they will be checked separately and they're not related to each other. But if you use elif or else, it will see the previous if statement if it is true or not. Shorthand if. So this is simply another way to write an if statement. So let's have a quick look at this as well. So basically all they're doing is they're saying that we can write this in one line as well. So this is also fine. You can do this. But this is only useful when you don't have multiple lines of code that need to be executed if the if statement is true, right? So for example, uh, if apple price is less than 5, we want to print it, but we also want to, let's say, print another line and say, let's buy it, right? So now both of these lines will only be executed when this is true, because both of these are indented and after the colon, right? But we can't shorthand this. But if we have only one line, we can shorten it. We can just put it in one line like this. It will do the same exact thing. There's no difference, right? I just ran it and ran the same. Okay. I don't really use this a lot unless, there's a small if statement somewhere, but usually if statements end up being much bigger than this, right? So, all right. So conditionals can also be nested. So what does this mean? Within an if statement, we can indent it further and have another if statement. So let's have a look at that. Okay. All right, so let's say the apple not only has a price, but it also has a color, right? So let's say our color, the color that we want is yellow. Sorry, the color that the apple has is yellow, but the one we want is red. So how do we check that? First we check. So the apple price we wanted is less than 5, right? We already checked that. Now inside this if statement, what I can do is, okay, so if this is true, I also want to check the color. So what I can do is if apple color is equal to red, then print less than 5 and red. Okay. Elif apple color is equal to yellow. Oh, all right, so we are recording again. We missed a little bit of uh, stuff about nested loops, but we were just getting started about data structures. So what we've seen until now is that we have primitive data types and they can be put into singular buckets such as our X and Y over here, right? And then data structures basically allow us to create a huge group of these singular data structures, right? So what are data structures? They're a collection of these primitive data types, but they can also include other data structures within them, right? So what that means is that within this singular block, we can also have like another data structure which has singular blocks within it, right? So that is how data structures are made. So we learn about a few of these data structures and some examples we can see over here are sets, tuples, arrays, dictionaries, objects, and more. So an unordered collection of unique values that are immutable is what we call a set. So I just said 3 words that we need to have close focus on over here, right? So the first one is unordered, right? So what this means is our collection, the order does not matter, right? So this bar that I've made over here, obviously we can see which is the left one and which is the right one over here, but how it is stored within the computer basically makes it unordered. So even if you put the set in a particular order, as we can see over here, when we print it out, it may not come in the same order, right? So this is done for multiple reasons, but all you need to know is that sets are unordered, right? Another property they have is that everything inside them should be unique, right? So if you create a data structure like this, which has multiple ones, multiple twos, and so on, it will ignore those extra ones and extra twos and so on, and just give us one of each value, right? Then the third word I said was immutable. So what does immutable mean? Immutable means that once we create a set, you cannot change the values in the set. You can add or remove elements from the set, but you can't change their values. Okay, everybody with me so far? All right. We'll have a look at
Yes.
an example in a bit, but let's first look at some methods that we'll be looking at as well, right? So first we have add. We use this to add elements to our set. Then we have remove. We use this to remove elements from our set. And then we have copy, right? This will give us a copy of our set. Okay. So over here we'll have some more. There's difference, intersection, and union. So these will perform your various set operations, right? This is from set theory. So if you know about set theory, you will be familiar with these, but if not, You can learn more about them later on, or I can talk about them if you want me to. But let's quickly have a look at sets. All right. So let me get rid of all of this. Okay, so let's create a set, right, which has 1, 3, 5, 7, and 98, let's say, right? So how do we create the set? Well, it's very easy. All you need to do is just use curly brackets, right? So let's say I want my set to be called set underscore 1, right? Then we start curly brackets, and in here we can have 1, 3, 5, 7, 98, right? So this is our set. So now what can we do with the set? We can add, remove, and copy it, right? So let's try to add something to our set. Before that, let's print it out once, just to see what it looks like without any alteration. So over here we have our set. As you can see, it is not in the same order in which I put it in, right? It changed its order on its own. Now what we can do is we can say, let's add something, right? So let's add a 9 value to this set. So we'll say set1 dot add and then 9, right? Now let's print it again. Now if I run this piece of code, this is before we added this 9 and this is after we add the 9, right? So 9 gets added to the set. Now we can also do a remove operation. So let's remove the 98. Oh, I said add. So let's make it remove. Okay. So now we run this. Oh, I forgot to print it out after that. Let's print it out. And now we can see 98 has been removed from this set, right? All right. So next what we can do is we can copy this set. So let's say I want to create another set, call it set2, and we use set1 and we copy it, right? Now if I print set2, it will be the same as set1, right? If I made this copy, let's say I remove this from here and I make the copy before I add or remove anything. Now what will happen is we get the initial set over here, right? So this is how it could be useful. You could keep track of your initial set before you make any modifications to it by creating a copy of it and putting it in another variable, right? So everybody clear so far on sets? Okay, let's clear some of this. All right, so let's create another set. Let's call it set2. And in here, I'll put the values 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Now what we'll try to do is we'll try to use the other three methods we just talked about. What are those? The first one is difference. So what is difference? Let's see. So let's do set2 dot difference, and then inside the bracket we will put set1. Okay. So let's see. We have 2 comma 4. So what happens is you you take set2, right? And when you do a difference with set1, what it does is it takes set2 and removes all the values that are common with set 1 and gives us a new set, right? So this is what we get over here. You can also store this in a variable if you want to. So now similarly, let's try to do a difference from set 1 to set 2, right? So if I try to run this, you'll see this is different. Why? Because in this case, the values that are common are being removed from set 1, right? So we're left with what is not common. So the next we can see is union. So the union will be same no matter which set you use first and which set you use second. All right, so we're just going to use set 2 first. Actually, let's just make it again. So set 1 union set 2, right? So let's try to run this. So these two, even though they look different, they are the same because as you can see, the 98 is just swapping places, but they're the same set, right? Then we can also do intersection, right? So intersection again should be the same. It will give us the common elements, right? So, right? So if I do the intersection for both, we just get the common elements. Okay. So there are obviously more function or more actions as well that you can take with these sets, right? So this link will be in the slides. Let me just show you quickly. Right. So when I send you the slides, this link over here will take you to a list of methods for Python sets. Okay. So the in operator is something we can use to determine if something is already in a set. So let's have a look at this as well. Oh, sorry. Um, there we go. So we have two sets, right? So what if I want to check if 98 is in set 2, right? So what I can do is I can say if, this is just what we just learned about. What do we write after if? We write a Boolean statement. So the Boolean statement we want is 98 in set 2 print 98 in set 2, else print 98 not in set 2. Okay. So now if I run this, we'll get not in set 2. Why? Because 98 is not in set 2, right? And now if I do the same for set 1, let's say, here we'll get the first one because it is true, right? Because 98 is in set 1 but not in set 2. So is everyone clear on how we can use the in keyword to see if something is inside a data structure, or in this case a set? This doesn't work for all data structures, but it will work for some data structures. It will make more sense as you're using them and as we learn more about them. Okay. All right. So we'll see more data structures next time, and I'll send you this slide so you can have a look at sets and do a quick exercise for sets, and also have a look at conditionals, right? And that brings us to the end of our presentation. So looks like we're actually done a little early today, but that's fine. Let's see if you guys have any questions, but I'll stop the recording over here.